Welcome to Season 2, Episode 43 of Comic Book Nation, the official podcast of Comicbook.com. I am your host, Kofi Outlaw, and with me, I got a core team here. We got Matt Aguilar.
What up?
Janelle Wheeler.
Hey, guys.
And producer Jim Viscardi is back with us.
Hello.
Yay.
And we're still kind of continuing our quarantine arc as we still put the show together from home. But, light is coming through the tunnel now because we got new stuff to talk about. There's actually news happening. There's actually content either arriving or coming down the pike. So there's stuff to talk about. And today's an interesting show because we're getting something back and we're losing something we've had for a while. So I thought that was an interesting title for this podcast. It's kind of about transitions, which, if you want to boil down 2020 in one word, transitions is not a bad one. So we're going to be talking about what's going on the kind of Marvel and DC gaming front. A big kind of milestone shakeup in WWE, a crazy, we never saw this coming shakeup in DC movies, plus also what is going on in comic books, because there are also some big events in comics that we're going to touch on. So we got to get into a lot of good geek variety today. So let's start at the top. In our news flash, Marvel's Avengers, the weird missing stepchild of 2020. Still here. It's supposed to be a big game like Marvel Spider-Man. There's been all kinds of hiccups, ups and downs, problems, confusions about this game.
Bad
delays.
tweets.
Yeah, bad tweets.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, what? Bad tweets? Wait.
They posted a what they wanted people to have as a virtual Zoom background or an animated Zoom background, except it was a picture of the Captain America statue being patrolled by police drones, and there was graffiti on the statue and all that, and they were just like, they're like something like they're always, or there's a reason they left and they're always watching or whatever, and it was such important, and they did it 2 weeks ago when most of the protest stuff was really still in high gear. It was
God.
It just it was one of those
really bad
like
timing.
It was just
You should have just released a black and white of the
yeah. It was that. It was just like
responsibility.
Oh my God.
Man.
Oh, no.
Okay, can we? Okay, I'm not even gonna get into that video. But oh my Lord.
Keep it light. Let's keep it moving. So we have confirmed something. So this is good news, actually. I mean, despite our tone. Good news. Marvel's Avengers has been confirmed for the next gen systems for PS5 and for Xbox Series X. We don't know some other things like if there'll be cross-play available and all that good stuff.
What's great is that it's free, because if you get the game on PS4 and Xbox One, you get the upgrade automatically.
That's good. Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
So they're not making people pay another $60 if you want to play that version.
Could you imagine, if you were halfway through it on the PS4,
oh, yeah,
and then you finish it out on the PS5?
Well,
that could be kind of cool.
And that's the cool thing, is that it actually, the saves will be cross-compatible. So you can actually start it on there and then move over. And
that's
really,
so
the
that's
new
good.
version.
That's really
So
fun.
basically, it lays out that Marvel's Avengers hit stores in the fall or in September.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get the game then and, get your play on if you're still playing it by holiday season or you get it later than September, whatever, and the PS5 and Xbox Series X hit, as Matt said, you get a free upgrade to that version of the game. And so there you go. You can kind of start on one gen and end on another, which is, I'm not a gaming expert, so don't quote me, but I think that's a rare bird that you can do that, right?
That's not
the first time ever.
That's actually really, I mean, if they were in need of good press, this is actually a good way to get that. I think that's not something you typically see. Typically, they're going to make you buy
the
one or
second
the
version,
other.
Yeah.
Let's just hope they don't squander all that goodwill, because they've got a press event coming up this week.
War tables tomorrow. Well, today actually, when you're hearing this. So I'm hoping to see. We're hoping that we're gonna, of course, get a new trailer and some things like that. But I'm hoping to see this mythical co-op multiplayer that we've heard about since day one, and they've just not said anything about it. I remember when we interviewed them so long ago.
The biggest thing about this game, we've been asking the whole time, is will you really be able to go full Avengers? Because I used to be able to play with a bunch of Avengers together in that old arcade game. if I can't do that now, like, what is
Captain
this new version of
Captain
the
America
America?
and
And the Avengers? Yeah, baby.
okay.
Yeah. If I can't do that kind of stuff anymore, like, what's 2020 even about?
where no one
So,
played Vision.
Yeah.
No one played Vision. Be
No, some
honest.
people played Vision.
Well, Vision was great.
Yeah.
More people played Dazzler in the X-Men one than people played.
Wow.
Wow. So much to unpack and argue about. No, I'm not. We're not on a separate podcast. Wow, you just dropped bombs on them.
I will say,
Kids
and
everywhere.
the other cool thing they did talk about was that it will have an enhanced graphics mode and a high frame rate mode. But from the way it's phrased, it sounds like you have to pick. Like you can't have both on. You have to either have high frame rate or in enhanced graphics mode. Now that might be the way we phrased it, but it reads that way. So I'll be interested to see if they clear that up.
Will they clear it up?
I hope so. I mean, at this point, I feel like they need to answer every question. I'm just hoping that thing we wrote about, where we got the first look at Captain Marvel on Kamala's wall, like, is legit. Like that we actually get to see like an in model character. But
yeah.
Did you guys see that photo where like they're all wearing like Stark Tech stuff and like Black Widow's front and center? Oh god, that was
wait, you don't like the Stark Tech? Wait, well, hold on. Let me make sure. The Stark Tech is the like black and gold looks, right?
No, it was like
okay.
It was like some of the other add-on type stuff. There was a photo that they shared that it just looked like weird. It looked oddly 90s, which was like 90s armor design with like 2020 gloss on it.
Most of the costume designs I have been disappointed in. I will say the Stark Tech one, which I thought was the gold and black set that they're all wearing, that looks sweet. And honestly, when I get the game, they'll probably be wearing that the whole time as long as they can have it. I did like casual Thor. Thor just like rocking a random blue shirt, like a lot of people had that. But I'm hoping that they clear up the cooperative play that they've teased for so long, where they've teased like armor pieces and you've been able to customize your person and take them in an Ultimate Alliance-like fight. I'm hoping we get that, because that's honestly the biggest question that's been out there. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, like I don't understand like how this game has not basically just been marketed as next-gen Ultimate Alliance. Like,
I mean, it worked for Nintendo. just
that's
give
what this
them
game
Ultimate Alliance.
That's what this game needs to be.
Well, we don't know what it is yet, but we're going to find out in September when Marvel's Avengers arrives, and we get to see what it looks like on the next-gen system as well. So the other side of the gaming talk we got to do is we got something on the DC front on Warner Brothers Games. And there's been kind of mounting speculation. We know we're getting another Batman game coming down the pike, and there's been a lot of speculation about that. But we got some domain names registered, and they may kind of reveal something pretty big. And the one I was kind of focused on was there's a possible Suicide Squad video game in the works, which is something that's been rumored for some time from Rocksteady Games. And, I kind of want to see that happen. I really want to do that. And I think there was something, wasn't it even like rumored that a title was like Suicide Squad kills the Justice League?
Squad kill the Justice League.
.com.
What?
This game is like, I feel like this is the what would be a good comparison? I mean, I guess you could say
this is the
movie
Duke I would say this is like a Duke Nukem Forever style thing. They've been talking about the Suicide Squad game for years.
Well, and we even got deleted, like there was concept art and there was a bunch of stuff that ended up leaking and was like, this is what was in the plans originally. Who God knows who or if that's still something that they decided to work on or whatever. We've seen that it's going to be a Superman game. It was going to be a Justice League game. Every Game Awards, everybody has like their hand on the button to publish that Rocksteady releases their new game, and it never happens. So like, I feel like Tyler Fisher, one of our gaming guys, I swear he has that every time. It's written. It's like ready to go, and it never happens. So hopefully at this DC, fandom event, it will actually happen. I would just love, at this point, I just want a game. I don't care what it is. I just want you to show a game.
The same way. I'm so tired of just hearing rumblings of things. Just, ugh.
But I agree with Kofi. The Suicide Squad one actually, to me, seems more interesting than the Justice League one, fitting with what Rocksteady does well.
No, I mean, like something with Suicide Squad would be. I feel like that's really is a property that is built with a lot of fun in mind.
Yeah.
kind of the way that the first, but you got James Gunn movie coming around, so this is
Exactly.
a great game to
Mhm.
kind of do, especially if you have like expendable characters and people you can just sacrifice.
It's gonna be better than that
In
mobile
horrible
game
ways.
that came out last time.
Yeah,
Did anyone else play that?
Just, no,
No.
stop
I
it.
did. Okay.
Every time I went for it, I just had to press. I ended up on iTunes bumping Purple Lamborghini instead. Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna keep an eye out game front for the both the Marvel, the DC, and everything in between. But hopping over from that, we had another big piece of news come out this week from the WWE section of life. It's an end of an era, huh? Matt, Jim, why don't you tell the
Brilliant.
people? Why don't you tell
And
what's
me
One
happening?
of us
And
is
me.
one of us gonna do the music? Is one of us needs to do the Undertaker music? Oh yes, and Janelle is a full-on
Oh, dude.
wrestling fan now.
Oh, man.
Can we just say that?
That documentary, I finished it this morning. I was like, I have to make sure I watch this last episode before we start this podcast. And I had tears in my eyes, like right before I got on camera. It was so well done. Oh my gosh. They did such a good job. They really did, telling his story.
It's so funny.
You guys want to tell the people what you're talking about?
Yeah. So okay. So
Oh, sorry.
so
The
here's
Undertaker.
so for those who don't know or haven't watched it, WWE has been putting out a 5-episode documentary series chronicling the Undertaker called The Last Ride. And so immediately from the get-go, people thought, oh my God, is the Undertaker finally going to announce his retirement kind of thing? And throughout the entire documentary, it goes through the series of start and stops of Undertaker thinking he's going to have his last match, and it's a look at such a unique peek behind the curtain, not only of like the wrestling business itself, but around a superstar, a character, a Hall of Famer, a legend who has been who has kept his character so closely guarded that like just any fan or anyone who knows about wrestling knows about the Undertaker. And so what we got at the end of this last one is Undertaker saying that he thinks that his last match with AJ Styles at this year's WrestleMania,
Boneyard match.
Which
the
was
Boneyard match,
no audience.
Yep.
It was like cinematic.
Is probably his last match. Now, of course, he caveats that with, well, if Vince ever needs me, in case of emergency, break the glass for the Undertaker. He'll have to reevaluate his position there.
Mm-hmm.
But look, he was super candid and super honest. Like, he does not want any more matches like the Undertaker
Super
Kane,
Showdown and
Super Showdowns,
Crown,
and his match with Goldberg. And to be totally honest, it's one of those things where like the fact that he was even thinking that his last match would have been at Extreme Rules, like that to me is not how you send the Undertaker off. So I am glad that AJ Styles, they say shoot your shot. And he did.
I love the setup. I love that at the end of the 4th episode, they actually showed like he was like, I'm just what the hell? Like, I'm just gonna say it. He can say no. And like, I love too that they teased it in like the 3rd chapter of like Undertaker even thinking like, man, that would be really cool. Like WWE is very good at this. Like when they plot out a storyline and editing and all this stuff, it's
WWE has
amazing.
They have some of the best video editors in the business. Yeah. Like bar none.
But I just love that they planted, because I didn't take it as it's an understandable caveat. Yes, that like if Vince breaks the emergency thing, the bat phone, so to speak, then I could. But it's something that's set up so organically throughout the whole series. Like Michelle McCool, his wife, is always talking about that. Like, you're not going to say no to Vince. Like Vince can call and dude flew home states away to get his gear when Vince was like, yeah, can you do Raw? He's like, I don't have my gear. So he flew home, picked up his bag, flew back just for like a Raw appearance to like start things up. So like he will pretty much do, if Vince really
here's what I think. Will he wrestle? Probably not. Will he show up as the Undertaker again? Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. And I think the documentary did such a good job of selling or not even selling, but talking and showing that like the effect that every one of those bad matches had on him, his confidence had on something. Because he was always, that was the thing that Triple H and McCool constantly talk about is like chasing the dragon, right? And it's a cycle. Like he would have a great match and then he'd want to have another one and then it would be terrible. And then he's looking for the thing to restore it, and then it's just this constant drug, so to speak. So
that's what stood out to me the most, is his complete dedication to not all of just like the glitz and glamour and the being on camera, but to the actual wrestling. Like he is a diehard wrestler, like to the core. It's everything that he loves is actually in the ring. And you have all these older wrestlers who have podcasts and they make appearances on TV, and that's just not what he's about. He's about actually getting in the ring. And at 55 years old, it's crazy. And it's also really
which is surprisingly young. I thought Undertaker was older than 50.
Yeah, I was
so did I.
That looks like he's 70.
But it seems like it because the guy has had like 90 surgeries.
Man, I
just thought he was basically like an animated Frankenstein.
No.
Yeah, but it's really cool to see if you guys, even if you're not like if you're kind of new to wrestling or you haven't really been on it, if you've slipped off of wrestling for a while, a lot of people that I've talked to, they kind of got back into it because of this documentary, and it was just really, really cool to see.
This is very much like basically wrestling's version of that Michael Jordan documentary. It was on ESPN, but it was so well done.
The
it was just so funny.
Jim Viscardi of his own, and nothing can its collaborators. No, I'm just kidding. No, I hear what you're saying.
No, but it was interesting. It was interesting, especially in that last episode for the Undertaker one, because he references Ric Flair and how and I had just watched the Ric Flair documentary thing that they did, which was only it's only about an hour or so about Flair's last match, and in that Flair talks about how when he got back to WWE after the WCW stuff folded, he just didn't feel like himself. He felt completely like he lost his touch, he lost it all. And for Taker to be like, I remember when Flair came back, and you're like, you're Ric Flair, you are wrestling, like get your shit together, and for Taker to be like, I now know exactly how he felt. Was sorry for the curse word, but for him to say like to do that, and on the total flip side of that, seeing Mark Calloway as a dad, it was really cool to see, right? Because this is a guy who, like I said, has lived and died by his character, and just
kayfabe matters to Calloway,
and so a lot of people. So like to see that aspect of him, and then in the last episode, and I'll stop here, but to see him like. There's a sequence where he is at the performance center and he is teaching some of the bigger guys there, and just some of the stuff that he you catch glimpses of the conversation there are just really, really cool. It's just that it's very like I said, he seems to be done with the Undertaker and ready for whatever this next phase of his life as Mark Calloway is going to be. So anyway,
very good.
All right,
recommended watching.
Yeah, I mean, Undertaker, the last ride. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's been a big deal, and then certainly ended with this milestone. And this guy's been a staple of wrestling for almost as long as I can remember being a wrestling fan. So, yeah, that's pretty crazy. All right, we're going to take a break, but when we get back, we're going to move into our deep dive section because we got to talk about the return of the original big movie Batman and what it means for DC movies in general. Plus, we got to jump into some DC Comics events and other comics because Matt's here and, he loves to talk about that stuff. So stay tuned for all of that. All right. So let's talk about what happened yesterday. 2020, man. What a wild year it's turning out to be. We were just all kind of chilling yesterday, hoping, anything in the news would happen. And boy, howdy did something happen. It was kind of a rushy news day yesterday. I was doing developing stories after developing stories. Joel Schumacher sadly passed away.
Yeah.
Like, let's take a minute just to say that, Batman Forever and Batman and Robin director Joel Schumacher passed away. He had been battling cancer and unfortunately lost that fight. And like, we're doing that story and thinking that's like the biggest thing in Batman news that's going to happen. And it wasn't even the biggest thing in Batman news for 20 minutes before we got like hit with something even crazier, which is that Michael Keaton, Batman 1989 star Michael Keaton, is coming back to play Bruce Wayne Batman in the Flash movie opposite Ezra Miller. So there's that. Yeah. And if that wasn't enough, we found out that Keaton isn't just signing on to do that. He's also signing on to basically be the Nick Fury of DC movies, kind of popping up in other DC films and as a kind of, I don't know, like a shepherd or something. Basically, I mean, this is what we were talking about, right? Like, how do you fix all this DC stuff? And Matt was saying, like, you basically got to go big and do an entire Crisis event as your thing. So, Matt, is this big enough for you? They got Michael Keaton back in
that's pretty big, and that's definitely what I would say I would have in mind. It's that kind of.
Now, everybody, let's just say, I was surprised that there are many more mixed feelings about this than I thought. Like, some people are like, I mean, understandably really psyched. Janelle looks shocked by this.
This was my first superhero movie ever in my whole life. And I went on vacation. My parents gifted me the soundtrack. And then they regretted that immediately because we road tripped for 6 hours and I listened to this soundtrack over and over and over. And not only that, I was blaring it at like the condo. I was obsessed with this.
It's a good soundtrack.
Oh, yeah,
Kidman's my favorite.
Yeah, I collected all those stupid cards that
yes,
had the whole movie in cards.
I was the girl.
I have those too.
Yeah, I had them in order in a book. Like,
yes.
I had the whole movie laid out. I had the cereal. The cereal was delicious. Like, I had all the merch. That was back when they used to give you real merchandise at McDonald's. Like, McDonald's would give you crazy real merchandise. Like, actual glass Batman cups.
Yeah,
like,
those things were sweet.
things. Like, yeah.
Oh, that was so cool.
Yeah,
I forgot.
so, like, yeah, Batman 89 was a big deal.
That was also when the promotional cereal wasn't just like leftover Cheerios or Lucky Charms.
No, they made a real Batman cereal.
I was somewhere in my office. I've got the old 89 Batman action figure that has the yellow belt.
Yeah, that thing was up. No, the one that comes out.
Yeah,
like,
the one that comes out.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was my favorite toy. Period.
Yeah. So I mean,
I'm about to call my cousin and be like, "Hey, do you have your Batman toys? I want them back."
So obviously, you can see from this crowd that Batman 89 is a big deal. So they're bringing it back. Some people think it's a sign of desperation from DC, is what I've heard. And I mean, I don't feel that way.
Dare you?
Like,
No.
I don't feel that way at all. I think we broke this down pretty well on the podcast already. It's like DC has this kind of big potential franchise to have a much more varied franchise than even Marvel does. They've been testing waters with things. You can make your Aquamans, your Wonder Womans, but you can also make your Jokers. And they kind of been doing that. And we said, well, you have all these weird continuity snags because of the half-finished Snyder stuff and like all that. And like, what do you do with all this? And I think Matt, like one of our options that Matt hit on the head was, you basically got to do Crisis as a movie event, right? Something that brings all these different franchises together, kind of puts them through a baloney sheet, and then comes out on the other end and says, okay, now this is the real, like, new established continuity, and you can fix a lot of things along the way. You can fix, like, who your Batman is, who your Superman is, all that stuff. You can close off some of the old stuff, start some new stuff. And it seems like, I mean, this is all still early, but it seems like that's kind of what we're putting together here.
Mm-hmm. I would love, and it looks like this is kind of a direction they're going in, but for DC to just swoop in and embrace the concept of the multiverse and just knock it out of the park, because you know, when it works, 10 years later, Marvel's going to do it.
When it works, it's like those Crisis events when they're great
on a small,
amazing
on such a smaller scale. Last year, the most recent,
technically this year,
the most recent CW crossover event was done incredibly well.
Okay.
And I think that's a good point, because I think that was a testing ground. where
Mhm.
people were like, where they showed like, and there's a lot of testing DC loves to do.
Yeah.
They used to be in the animated wing. They used to test all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
They got us a Suicide Squad movie and things like that. But Crisis was a test. They put some money into it. They were like, okay, they allowed all the kind of crossovers, and there were even more that we
So
didn't get to
cool.
see that people like that were even crazier that they were doing, including bringing Batman 89 into it and everything. And it was such a big event, and people did kind of bite, and people didn't run away and or had their head explode because of all the multiverse stuff. People
Right.
got it and were able to hang with the comic bookiness of all that. So like, yeah, I mean, it's easy to do. Like, just make whatever DC movies you're making, and then at the very end, just have Michael Keaton's Batman show up and be like, "Sorry to like bum you out, but something's coming. Like, gotta prepare." And then you just do one Crisis
As
event
long as
movie
they
eventually, and that's
Kiss
like
from
your
a
Avengers.
Rose, we're good.
Oh, my
Just put Kiss from a Rose.
It should
Playing
be
it on
playing.
like a
I mean, it has to
jukebox
be
in the
playing in the
background or something.
background of something.
Yes,
Like, yeah.
that
Yeah.
would be
No,
so
and then you
great.
do a Crisis movie that's like your Avengers Infinity War Endgame,
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh,
Carter,
it's so good.
and then
it's just-
yeah, and
let's
just
say,
hop
like-
through all kinds of fun references. Get Ben Affleck back in here,
Mhm.
get
Mhm.
Cavill in here, like get everybody in, and at the end you just have a new DC movie universe. Some things are the same when we get to pick and choose, because that's the greatest thing about Crisis.
Yes.
It's just
Yeah.
totally just cherry picking exactly what you want to keep from DC and exactly what you don't.
Well,
And then
and
you
like
just hang it all
Rebirth
together.
was essentially one giant Crisis. They just
Yep.
branded it a different name. But like that's what DC does like every 4 years is like,
Well-
okay, well, let's wipe this off the board. Let's pick the best parts of the new 52 or whatever. We'll keep that. That worked. The rest of this was trash. You know, whatever. Like they
But that's
do that.
like that's so DC, right? Like when I think of DC comics, like the multiverse is so inherent to just DC in general that this is a no-brainer. And this may be a bit of a hot take for some
Oh
folks,
no.
because I know people really wanted this. I love Michael Keaton coming back as Batman so much more than the idea of Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Thomas Wayne.
Well, wow. Well, okay.
I like
You know
both.
what's crazy?
I like
I've
both.
seen
Can we
We
that
just
don't
have
now.
have to
all of
choose.
it?
Yeah,
You don't have to
choose.
choose, but for this movie in particular, I'm okay with that.
But it
I
also
don't-
kind of
I don't
depends
even
on what
think we
they
have to
do.
choose in this movie. I don't think we know
Yeah.
if we even
But
are
if
going to be
they-
choosing in this movie.
If they do Flashpoint, though, I understood why you have someone like Jeffrey Dean Morgan be Thomas Wayne, because
Yeah.
that's a different style of story. Like, yes, they're the same type of story, as in like someone screws up time or someone does whatever and they fix a bunch of stuff. But like the feel of those movies and those stories is very different. So Jeffrey Dean Morgan made sense for Flashpoint.
Yeah.
If you're bringing in Keaton, I don't think you're going that route. I think you're going more along the lines of like a Crisis, and just you have a figure that's an important figure from the Batman mythos be here, and this Nick Fury thing. I think it makes more sense. Keaton, like I like both personally. I'm cool with both, but Keaton makes more sense because the biggest thing about DC, aside from the multiverse, has always been legacy. That's where it shines. That's where it,
Mhm.
in a lot of ways, for me, outshines the Marvel universe in that respect
Yep.
of how they treat legacy and characters. So having Keaton and then whoever, if it's going to be Pattinson, be the Batman going forward, and you're going to kind of work out all the Affleck stuff, that makes perfect sense to have this. Everyone can almost agree on Keaton. Like you get a lot of argument among Val Kilmer, about George Clooney, of course, about like all the Batmans that have come before, and even Batfleck, who I adore. You will get a lot of back and forth. Keaton almost is one of those, like, he's almost universally loved in that role. You're going to get very few people that have something negative to say about Keaton's Batman. They might not love it as their favorite, but they don't dislike it. So, you know.
Here's the thing, though. Keaton's also he's 68.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's like, okay.
He's older than Undertaker?
He's so true. That's crazy to me.
And so realistically, like the question then becomes, like, and it's been said that, Keaton in this will be, kind of peppered potentially throughout a few other movies, playing a mentor kind of role, which I'm all about. But like, are we going to see him back in the suit? I would love it. But like, if this gets us to, even like a Batman Beyond type scenario,
I was waiting for you.
we got all this
just
jumping the
brilliant.
gun. Come on, we're
Sorry,
getting all
sorry.
this stuff. Yeah, no, but yeah, let's talk about that, because the big thing is, what does this mean for the larger DCEU? There's the question about, are we going to straighten out our Batman thing? Can you use Flashpoint as a backdoor way? I mean, you're already introducing Keaton's Batman, so Ezra Miller's already met Ben Affleck's Batman, so obviously these are different. So can you just come out of this with a new Batman? But yes, is this our closest thing to getting us to a Batman Beyond movie? Because, I mean, this pretty much sets the stage. I mean, it's never been closer, right? Like,
I would love Keaton as old Bruce in that. I love Batman.
Oh,
but like,
I mean, and that's like an
That'd
easy
be so
teaser.
cool.
Ezra Miller's Flash has to go back to his thing, and then but you still have kind of Keaton's Batman who's got to prepare for a crisis. So what does he do? He kind of hires he has to outsource Batmaning to a young man named Terry. That'd be awesome.
Wow.
People wanted this. I mean, there's two things people are gonna. I mean, that could beat Marvel too, right now. The like you said, the kind of multiverse crisis, that whole thing, which Marvel eventually does have to fix, but is going to take like 12 years. You can get done now, and the future character, right? Like Marvel's not like really getting into these future characters yet. Like you don't have a Sony either. Like you don't have a Spider-Man 2099 movie or something like that. So you can do like a Batman Beyond and start to get that ball rolling and get the future stuff going.
You mean Doctor Strange can't fix everything?
No, unfortunately not.
Darn it.
Sorry.
So do we think that Flash is going to have to go to the future to get Keaton's Batman, or is he going to go to the past and get?
I think they've said openly that this is like a multiverse thing. So he's going to be stopping at different points in a multiverse. I think Keaton might be the one who tells his Barry Allen's stupid butt like how to do this without screwing everything up. But
that was so judgmental on Barry Allen.
Dude, you trust Ezra Miller's Barry Allen to go hop skipping through the multiverse?
So here's the thing. What I will say is that I have not believed in this Flash movie that's ever going to happen, and I still don't necessarily feel confident, but I'm hoping now. I have fingers crossed because I want this to work out.
I'm getting to the point where I'm almost wanting to believe.
Yeah, like it's so close. But what I will say is, if they manage to get all this off the ground, I adore the idea of Ezra's Barry Allen being the one to like be the linchpin in all this, because Barry Allen in the comics, to me anyway, is boring. He's completely boring. He's cardboard, and it's always been that way. Wally West to me is way more interesting as a character. So Barry Allen tends to be the one in the middle of all this, and Ezra Miller's Barry Allen is way more interesting just on a personality level than Barry in the comics is. So I mean, this is one of those things where it could actually end up being better if they play all the cards right than even the comics one, which I really like. But I hope it's the multiverse aspect. Like, I like the future stuff, and like Batman Beyond makes sense. Like, it's what happens in the future. But I almost like the idea of the Batman Beyond thing being another world, not necessarily in our future of like the main timeline. Also, right now, this conversation we're having is the problem with DC's multiverse, is that once those gears start going,
which timeline is Earth Prime, basically.
It is so easy, and we've seen it in comics, to go off the rails. Infinite Crisis is a perfect example of like it going off the rails.
Yeah, we're gonna save this because we're gonna get to that, and there's a whole discussion about that. I want to have about DC and crises and all that stuff.
Okay.
So it's like one of those things you hope they nail it down.
I mean, it's been described. I'm just doing some research. They've already teased it's going to be like Back to the Future. They've already teased that it's going to be grounded in the personal story of Barry trying to save his mother and kind of having that go askew and having to deal with kind of restoring that mistake that he has. And so you got to imagine it's going to take him a few tries. He's not going to get this right, like getting this messed up universe back to order. So it seems like when he messes up the universe, like the Batman that he meets will be kind of probably Keaton's Batman, who's trying to help him kind of restore things. And that's good because Keaton has the gravitas to kind of do stuff with him about like loss and getting over it and having to deal with it and not becoming too obsessed and all that great stuff that's mined out of that Flash Batman meeting that even resulted in the kind of really powerful ending to the Flashpoint comic story. Where he kind of comes back after meeting Thomas Wayne, which we won't get the same thing because he brings the letter from Thomas Wayne back to Bruce Wayne, and it's like this rare thing where Batman gets like really emotional and stuff. Anyway, like those two characters really work, and Keaton has the kind of great foil to be the Doc Brown to this kind of kid's Marty McFly, and I could see the appeal to that. But so we know that's going to be, there will be something to ground it. And so, yeah, but there's also a lot of room to have fun with kind of Barry, again, messing up things and going to these other timelines and doing like that Simpsons episode with the toaster and Homer and kind of going to different
I just have
timelines,
one
trying to
request
fix things.
of Warner Brothers. Please, for the love of Lord, do not create a cosmic treadmill. Please. Please. I hate that thing with a passion. It's the most comic booky thing of comics.
It could very well be in there. But I would like to see,
complicated.
In that framework, I would love to see Thomas Wayne be an antagonist in this and some of the stuff, because City of Bane made that really good. And to see, I would love to see him kind of begin to kind of be like the Biff to this and begin to hijack, like, you know, Flash's timeline thing. And if he and Keaton could have like a scene meeting together, like, that would be amazing. That'd
right,
be
but wouldn't the more like the most natural foil to this be Reverse Flash though?
Ugh.
Well, dude, I mean, yeah, he's gonna probably.
I agree, but I
think Thomas Wayne's Batman would be a great kind of X factor, somebody who kind of tries to hijack the plan because he doesn't want a world. I mean, he would probably want to show a world where, you know, Bruce didn't die or whatever, you know. How it goes.
Can we say that is the most overused character in all of comics?
Reverse Flash.
Reverse Flash is the most overused, overrated character.
Dumb name, kind of like overused character.
But I've got a question though, because like this, even with all of this multiverse, Flashpoint, wherever we end up, the Snyderverse is still pretty much the backbone of the DC film universe, though, isn't it?
Pre-crisis.
Yeah.
Pre-crisis, post-crisis. We're gonna start getting these terms out and dusting them off, baby. A bunch of movie audiences are about to get introduced to all of that. But yeah, I mean, that's what's gonna be. Like, this will be the end of the Snyderverse. This will be, in which we called years ago, saying that, like, I mean, I think we even have an article buried in somewhere in Comic Book DC that's basically that says use the Flash to fix this mess.
Yeah,
and it's this idea. It's like, get us out of here.
I think the one character that you would see obviously the least change from and the myths surrounding her is Wonder Woman. I think Wonder Woman is the one. But that's the thing,
like we said, you pick and choose. That's the great thing about DC and Crisis. Aquaman's going to be basically the same, except of weird stuff from that movie. They don't, you know, there is no Pipple Toto anymore in the DCEU. Like, that gets erased, but like,
I forgot.
But like Wonder Woman will be the same, or they'll do that kind of new timeline where she was like officially the first, or whatever. Jason, you know, there's a lot of things you can play with. So you can even make more Wonder Woman stories in a renewed timeline in which you can do things differently. You know what I mean?
If Warner Brothers has the money to bring back Michael Keaton, do they have the money to bring back Ryan Reynolds?
No.
Just stop.
No. And you know why? Because I want my movie to succeed. And he
can always cameo, but like, him and Blake Lively would be a fun. I mean, that's the thing. Again, this is Crisis. One of the fun things is you could have a lot of fun cameos.
He doesn't have to stay. You just get him to show up.
Yeah, no, I think it's a cool cameo.
Would be a great cameo. Yeah, that would be hilarious.
And you should also get Taika to jump back. We can get him to jump back.
Yeah, I mean,
also. Here's the thing. Maybe this is the way I get Mark Strong back as Sinestro, because Mark Strong killed that role. Yeah, it's so disappointing that we didn't get to really see him like become Sinestro, the Fear Corps, and all that. But anyway, I digress.
All right, we're gonna move on because we're just gonna probably be a lot to unpack because this changes everything about the upcoming DC movie slate and what it's gonna be all about. So we'll be, I'm sure, talking about it. But wow, flexing on. But DC continues to have one. I mean, 2020 is melting down for a lot of people, but DC is somehow coming up like a phoenix out of this.
I am shocked at how quiet things have been on the Marvel front, while DC is literally just stepping into it and just.
But can we say that that's partly because Marvel movies had their crap together? I mean, they don't have to. They don't have to. Speed a bunch of stuff up.
And this is a different discussion, but there's an argument to be made about how they could have been kind of teasing things along and keeping us interested in Phase 4 a little bit more.
I mean, sure. Yes, absolutely. They could have robbed the thunder a little bit, but I imagine there's some people at Marvel go like, let them have their moment. Okay, they've worked so hard to get here.
Moving right along to DC Comics. We're going to DC Comics now from DC Movies. This week and last week, we had Scott Snyder on the show to talk about Dark Knight's Death Metal, and Matt gave a review. I had not read this series yet, and so I went back over the weekend and read all, the whole Dark Knight's Metal, and now this first issue of Death Metal. I will say that so far, I think Death Metal, I'll agree with Jim, we were talking before the show, seems like a better, from the first chapter, a better setup for a better story. Dark Knight Metal wasn't my favorite, and I think both of these stories kind of have made me kind of center in on what I think, because we hear things behind the scenes here that we don't report because we can't substantiate, but we've heard things like, there are different kind of attitudes about what DC Comics should be between different DC Comics creative people, and I'm beginning to see why now, and I think I know my place in this battle, which is, I think DC has a kind of at a place where there's either two approaches to DC right now. It's either things that kind of streamline and simplify the mythology, or things that really just take it and expand it in a very comic booky, crazy kind of way. And I think Dark Knight Metal and Death Metal subsequently falls into that latter category, where the thing I didn't so much enjoy about Metal is it's very smart writing and it's very smart pulling together of the DC continuity. But it also is in some ways so inside baseball for like DC. Like you can't even like be a DC fan and necessarily understand all this. You need to be like a very hardcore DC book. DC, yes. Like I read everything DC ever does, and I know all of these stories kind of thing, because they're just referencing so much stuff that has been retconned like 50 times. Like from the Hawkman stuff to the Nth Metal, now numbering Nth Metal and some X-Men Weapon X type deal, to like 10th Metal, and like all these metallic references back to Plastic Man, John Henry, like the Metallic Men, like all this stuff is just so inside baseball, and that's just only part of it. Then you got to get into all the Crisis stuff that's happened and what that means, and how the universe has all these multiverses, but now there's this whole back of the map, like subconscious universe. And it's just so, even the Court of Owls stuff finally comes back around with their whole master scheme from when Batman got sent back in time in Infinite Crisis. It's like,
Barbados.
Head melt, like, yeah, makes your head melt just trying to like pull all these things together. This is just like decades of DC storytelling, like coming at you in weird metal metaphors and
AC/DC.
Yeah,
it was so good.
And weird metal metaphors, and like it was just surprisingly short on actual substantive like action in each book, as it was just so much information overload and trying to explain like all these crazy things like Batman and Superman going through some trip through the void and all this stuff. So I say all that to say, at least Dark Knight Death Metal seems in the first issue like it's just more of a straight up comic booky. There's this one splash page, which again, just like made me almost want to put this down. And it's like a splash page of the big villain, Perpetua, who I didn't even know, because I thought you could just read Dark Knight Metal and go from Dark Knight Metal to Death Metal. But apparently a lot has happened in between these two series that I still don't understand, and now have to go back. But there's a splash page about Perpetua, the Anti-Monitors.
I thought they actually did a pretty good job of summing all that up.
Yeah, but all that made my head want to explode. Like I was cool with just the Batman who laughs, just hunting down alt version of Wonder Woman and Swamp Thing and having this master plan. I was like, okay, this is classic stuff I can get with. But like, yeah, once we get to those splash pages about all the new gods, they're trying to pull all of this together, I was like, DC, you are going to lose me. And this is why it's so hard to break into some of these books. Like, it really is.
Jim, do you want to go first?
Look, I did not really enjoy Metal, because I thought, for me, Metal felt like a lot.
Metal was a lot, admittedly.
Metal was a lot.
From a fan of Metal was a lot.
and so, but like, I'm glad Metal happened because of the things that it put into the DC toy box. So Batman who laughs and kind of all
great new character.
All of that other stuff, and the idea of the dark multiverse and whatever. And so going into this one, I was a bit trepidatious on it, but I really enjoyed it in a way that I can appreciate. And I felt this way about like Hickman's X-Men, right? I went into this issue knowing that there are things that I do not totally understand, but I enjoyed it enough to hope that as the issues go on, it will be explained, and the things that I need to know will be presented in a way.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about Watchmen's all up in this too. Doomsday Clock is all up in this too. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but like, you know, the way Scott deals with characterizations of, you know, this current Wonder Woman that we're that we're following, what it's doing with Swamp Thing right now is fun. What it's doing with how it got Batman involved, and what, you know,
I can't wait for the Superman stuff to come. Like that small things.
You know, for the main Bruce Wayne to be a Black Lantern now is kind of like nuts.
The Dead Bats thing. I mean, this first issue really does throw everything at the wall.
But it's cool, like the idea of before we go into we're gonna talk major.
We should say spoilers.
So sorry, Batman. Sorry if I spoiled the Batman thing for you, but it's been out.
It's been a week.
It's been a week. There's a moment where, you know, Batman is getting a message to Wonder Woman, and he says like, "Hey, melt the invisible jet down, because that metal will be invisible, and we can use it for armor or whatever." And so this like weird electric energy infused chainsaw that Wonder Woman's got.
Chainsaw of Truth.
Like she dips it in this metal, and you get the remnants of the invisible jet, and then you just turn to this splash page where, you know, I'm sure is a MacGuffin because it's the first issue and there's no way that they're going to get rid of the Batman Who Laughs just yet. But it was a cool moment. I think Greg Capullo has not looked better. And FCO on colors, Glapian on the inks, like it was just an overall great comics package.
There's a big scene where it's like all the different, like a bunch of different Nightmare Batman from all the universe. So you have like Clayface Batman, you have like all these deals, and it's this giant splash, and it's gorgeous. Like there's so many. The moment you're talking about with Wonder Woman and the chainsaw is such a cool moment. But
you don't get page turns like that.
No,
anymore.
Not as much.
Not as much.
Yeah. So I bounce off of Jim's. Like I am pretty enthusiastic about this issue, and one of the things that we just talked about, ironically, is how you approach DC books. And DC, to me, excels when they either go completely insane and just throw all these cool ideas in a blender and have some fun in the universe. Grant Morrison is a perfect example of this on several books over the years, and Snyder does the same type of thing. It's what I loved about Metal, is that it had so many ideas, and yes, it was incredibly dense with the World Forge and Dark Multiverse, and like that they're trying to draw it to the real one because it's all where all the bad worlds go, and like Wally West's like whole thing arc in this and becoming like Metreon, like all that. It's nuts. But it's also like incredibly fun and just like it's just so cool to see what they're gonna do.
Well,
next.
That's what I'm saying. Like I feel like now the first one was just so much of the raw, like just kind of crapping out the
Here's
idea.
The setup.
But I liked Metal overall. Like I actually liked the mystery of hunting down the nth metals and finding the different things and seeing why I dug all that.
Like the minute they like brought up nth metal, and I was like, nope, I'm out.
Oh no, I dug it.
Yeah, so then the whole thing in Batman, Superman's weird, crazy. Like, I hate, and DC is the worst about this. Is like what should be like a simple, awesome, multifaceted like battle or war somehow has to dip into some metaphysics as somebody goes through some kind of spiritual and
it's very. I mean, look,
that's also very
Scott Snyder has never been one to not say that, you know, one of his biggest inspirations, you know, in this industry is Grant Morrison, and so this feels like the craziness you would kind of expect from Grant Morrison, I think, would distill down to make a little bit more sense, because I could never get into Morrison stuff.
Like
combined with
Morrison's-
the darkness and the interpersonal stuff that Scott Snyder has been, known for and very good, very good with. Like, there are parts of this book that are dark. Like, there's moments and lines that I'm just like, whoa.
Well, and Snyder, to me, has always actually had a little bit more focus on enough individual character moments in between all the eccentricity, and Morrison sometimes gets lost in the eccentricity. And for me, there was enough for that metal. For Death Metal, yes, it is quite dense. If you haven't read Justice League, if you haven't read Hell's Risen, there are a lot of Perpetua things in there. I mean, the whole battle, Perpetua and the dueling energies and all that played out in Justice League.
I have no idea who Perpetua is. I'm just going with it.
But see, to me, there was enough in here. And honestly, look, I read all that, and there's still parts I don't quite understand because I read all that stuff, and I was like, okay, my brain starts. However, what I thought Death Metal did was distill that, and in 2 pages, there's that 2-page essential splash page of here's exposition on who Perpetua is, what Luther did,
what Hickman would do in 2 text pages and a giant diagram.
Yes.
Scott Snyder did with a whole shit ton of word captions.
But here's the thing: which one do you prefer? I tend to like both, and if they're used correctly, I kind of prefer this because I get to see something, not just a chart. I would like to actually see art.
I do like the charts.
Hickman's charts have a sneaky way of taking a comic splash page can only do so much with the space it has, where Hickman's charts actually tells you an entire series story. And then says, now all of that, here's how that factors in.
I appreciate it, but if I wanted to, but this is a visual medium.
It's just
it's a visual medium. I'd rather have visuals with that as opposed to a PowerPoint chart. It's something I appreciate, and I thought he did a really good job. I would actually be interested to see if Janelle would read Death Metal 1, and I would like to see what.
I will try whatever.
Right, because you haven't read any of the other stuff.
Yeah, I kind of said I was sticking. Literally before we started the podcast, we were all discussing that maybe I should stay with Marvel because it's easier to process.
True.
And
this would be a dip in the toe, just see what you think.
I would love to try. I'd love to give it.
I like Death Metal, so I'm just saying, it might. I would be but I would just be interested to see what your thoughts were of how approachable it is. How, if it's confusing, if it is kind of, you get enough to just have fun with it. I would be really
well, even as I guess now I can't say that I'm a non-comic book reader because I've been reading comic books, but when I started watching Crisis and Flashpoint and all of that on TV, as someone who didn't know any background on any of that, I feel like they did a really good job, just to flip it all the way back, of explaining it to the noobs, the people that don't understand or have any idea what it is. And that's what I want them to do in the movies as well. But yeah, I'll give this a go. If you guys want me to, give me homework, man. I love it.
All right, we're going to end there. Matt, take us out with what comics are coming out this week, and we're going to close out the show.
All right, so this week is a pretty good week of a mix of books. So we have Angel and Spike number 11 from Boom Studios. This week is the big Mighty Morphin Power Rangers number 50. A ton of stuff happens. This is the big climax to Necessary Evil. Make sure to watch the site for a interview with writer Ryan Parrott all about the book. So make sure to read the issue before you watch that because there will be spoilers. Moving over to DC, we have Aquaman number 60. Batman number 93, which we will definitely get into at a different time. We have a big Green Lantern issue.
Oh, man, I forgot. We didn't do that today.
Well, we talked so much about Death Metal. Yeah, we'll talk
more than I meant to. So here, we're going to get to that on Thursday.
We have Green Lantern 80th Anniversary 100-page Super Spectacular, which does have a series of stories from renowned creators, including one that I thought was really good from Jeff Johns. We also have Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey number 2, Teen Titans number 42, Once and Future number 8, which we talked about on the show a couple of weeks ago, but definitely if you are into the King Arthur mythology and everything, definitely I couldn't recommend that series more. We have John Wick Volume 1 from Dynamite, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 105, Star Wars Adventures The Clone Wars number 2, Die number 11. We have Spawn number 307, Captain America Marvel Snapshot number 1, Immortal Hulk number 34, which is ending soon, so you definitely want to finish out the run. Empire Avengers number 0, which is the preamble, if you will, to that big Marvel event that's coming up. We also have Thor number 5, Rick and Morty presents The Council of Ricks number 1, and The Art of the Last of Us Part 2. Yeah, it's comics.
All right. Thank you, Matt. That'll do it for this episode of Comic Book Nation. If you're just now getting into the show during our quarantine arc, we put up new episodes every Wednesday and Friday on Comicbook.com, where you can subscribe to our RSS feed, or you can subscribe at your favorite podcast listening platforms. We are on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Google Playlists, Stitcher, and Spotify. You can find video of the podcast at Comicbook.com YouTube page, or watch live with us every Wednesday and Friday on Facebook. You can also tell any Amazon Alexa device to fire up Comic Book Nation podcast, and it'll start it up for you. If you want to chat with us, you can always hit us up at the hashtag Comic Book Nation. You can find me at Kofi Outlaw.
You can find me at Janelle Wheeler.
You can find me at Matt Aguilar CB.
And I'm at Jim Biscardi.
And if you are also just getting into the show, we give out T-shirts to our fans who leave 5-star reviews on iTunes. When we do a kind of review roundup, we read them on air on the show. And if we read yours, all you got to do is send us some info and we'll send you a T-shirt. We are out of our offices right now, and I don't know when we're going back, but when we do go back, we're going to be sending out some T-shirts. Make sure you go on iTunes and leave a 5-star review. I've been keeping up and seeing you guys steadily just keeping those 5-star reviews coming in, a lot of new fans. So we want to thank you for that. That'll do it for this episode. We are Comic Book Nation. We want to say stay connected, guys. Stay healthy. Make sure you're taking care of yourselves, and make sure you check back in with us every Wednesday and Friday. And we'll see you then. Peace.
Deuces.